What is going on, folks? I am Aaron Armstrong. I run the podcast Winners, Wallets, and Worldviews. I also own the company Armstrong Ventures, which is an online consulting company where I help entrepreneurs and leaders break into their own realm of leadership. Now, today I'm wearing a robe and I'm wearing these glasses. I actually don't wear glasses. These are UV or blue light or whatever they call protecting glasses, so it's not a lot easier to work on the computer. Nonetheless, I wanted to show you how to start a podcast in 30 minutes or less, because after I started my podcast this year, I found out it was quite easy, and this seems to be one of the most common questions that I get all the time from people all over different social media platforms is, how do I get started? So with that said, here we go. So this is what I always tell people to do for step one, is pick a genre and get your cover art figured out. And this is actually kind of the fun part. So your cover art will be 1400 by 1400 pixels. So as you can see to the right, this is my cover art, Winners, Wallets, and Worldviews. This is about the size that you're going to want. I like to make my face a little bit bigger so that when you're on somebody's on your phone, they can see what's going on. They can actually get a picture. I see sometimes people's faces or their portraits are so small that you can't see it. And I obviously got creative with it. So my podcast is about balancing masculine and feminine energy as well as creative and intellect. So you can see that you have the black and white for the left brain, and then you also have the bearded version of me. So I got professional photography taken, and I also designed this with some graphic designers. So that was kind of my flavor, whatever your flavor is. So the next one is picking a genre. So right here we have all the different podcast genres that iTunes typically will fall into. So what I did was I picked a couple genres that I thought would resonate best with my following. So my following is typically entrepreneurs. They're typically fitness professionals. They're typically people that are leaders or interested in philosophy. So what I typically will go through is self-help, which is under health, which is good. So, fitness, lifestyle, they always enjoy motivation and things like that. So I have the self-help industry. I also will sometimes, and you can change these every time, but sometimes I'll put in philosophy because I talk a little bit deep, and then I'll have business news as well. So you can kind of like resonate, but pick 3 genres because eventually that's what we're going to put into Lipson when we get into it. So just keep that in mind as we go. You're going to want to have those genres selected. And then the last thing that you're going to want to know for step one is, what kind of style podcast do you want? Are you going to want to do it where you go raw and it's just you speaking? So I know lots of people that prefer that style of podcast. I do some of those as well, where it's just me talking. You have to go into it and understand that sometimes you're not as interesting to listen to as you might think. One person just speaking to the camera sometimes isn't as interesting as you'd like. So having a co-host, if you'd like to have a co-host on your show that can kind of ground you, if you're kind of the wild one, or vice versa, maybe you're kind of the straight one and then the other one's a little bit wild, that's typically a good dynamic to work with. If you want to have interviews, those are always great to get your podcast rolling so you can start to share other people's platforms. If you want to just go completely raw, so if you think of like Joe Rogan or someone like that, where they just have it's just press record and they just have a conversation. That's also really a good way to do it, as well as some people have a little bit more professionally produced ones where they'll actually edit it out. They'll cut out swear words. They'll cut out all sorts of stuff, and they'll make it very well rehearsed. They'll add in music and sound effects. They'll have kind of staged in series. So you think of more like a television show or something like that, where they'll have various segmented segments throughout their podcast. You also have ones that are edited, so vice versa of Joe Rogan, you might edit stuff out. Some people prefer this, some people don't. So some PR firms want to have a last look when they have guests on, and those PR firms will do that. And then they'll want to edit out things that may not be consistent with the brand. Well, other people will say, look, I don't want you to misrepresent me. I want to just be out there raw, uncut. So think about the type of guests that you're going to want to have on in the show if you do have guests, because that's going to be part of it as well. And I kind of touched on the structured piece as well with the different types of segments that you have. So think about the style that you want. So the style that I run, it's kind of a mix of interviews and raw. So I like to make it raw unless somebody has an issue with it. Then I'll edit something out if they want me to go back and do it. Typically they don't. They're usually comfortable with just what they see is what they get. The conversation happens. I'm not like one to ask like provoking questions by any means, so maybe that's part of it as well. So you just got to kind of think of the type of genre that you're looking for, and then the style that you want. So your genre, style, and then get your cover art figured out. Keep in mind, put a lot of thought into your cover art, because this is the first thing people are going to look at, and there's a lot of good research you can do. I've always done research with cover art and noticed that faces typically sell. People can relate to a face. However, if it's just words or images or cartoons or something, I don't think people click as much. And that's just the research that I've done. But try out your own thing. So that's step one. Okay, so step two is get a hosting software. So I recommend Lipson. This is what I use. This is what a lot of podcast professionals use. A hosting software is the back engine for what's going to publish to all of the different sources or options that you want to go to. Okay, so here's Lipson right here. As you can see, there's a little bit of a snapshot of all the different downloads that you can get. I've blurred this out for you guys because this is proprietary to us. We like to use a lot of this information. However, you can see a little snapshot of your downloads. And this is where you're going to do a majority of your podcast work. So in here you have your content. And this is where you can actually schedule out all of your different episodes. So right here you can see all the episodes that I've had. And this is where you can start to put in your information. This is so if you wanted to go through this, all you've got to do is, I believe we just add one. My assistant does a lot of this stuff, so I apologize. And as you can see, when you're adding a podcast, you select your file. So you add your media file. This will be an MP3 format is what I usually do. You'll add it in, you'll go to details, and this is what's going to populate as your title, your subtitle. So whatever style you want to do, it could be, you could go by episode title and then what's called, or you could go like episode number 1200 and something like that. And then there's a brief description of what it's going to be. And then on iTunes, they'll have a little bit of a separate summary. So you can kind of get an idea. If you pull up an iTunes podcast, you can see where these will all populate pretty quickly. And you'll have seasons, episodes, and then the author. So mine are mostly explicit because I do cuss a lot. However, if you want to make a clean one, you can make it clean as well. So it can be a little bit more family friendly. Artwork, this is where you're going to upload your artwork. So your thumbnail, that's your 1400 by 1400 pixels, and a widescreen image depending on where you're going to be publishing this to. Like I said, we'll get to that in a second, but wherever you're publishing it to, it might change depending on if you have a banner option or not. So scheduling, so these are all the different places that my podcast will publish. So I have Google Play, iHeartRadio, the Lipson Classic feed, which we're going to show in a second, podcast page, Spotify, web player, YouTube, and then obviously iTunes is involved in this as well. So that's going to be save, and then you can publish, and at that point your podcast would be live. So depending on what order you want to go in, I don't necessarily, all these different steps, I recommend going through all the steps and then going back and then deciding when you're going to publish. So that's a little bit about Lipson. Here you have the destinations, which I kind of talked about just a second ago. And these are all the different places that your podcast is going to publish. So this is pretty cool. And you can see that Google Play, iHeartRadio, Lipson Classic feed, this podcast page, Spotify, web player, YouTube. One time, all you got to do is press a button and it's going to publish to all of these locations, which is super nice. And especially if you have a good following on one of these or another, it's going to be really helpful to jump right into a podcast on all these. And you can add a whole bunch of different ones. So keep that in mind. It's pretty cool, and I really like that as well. When you start getting good, you can start selling your advertising and send premium accounts on here as well. And your storage is going to be limited by whatever subscription you have on here. So I think Lipson does a very inexpensive one for like $5. I think I do one, it's like $15 a month or something like that. And that gives me whatever this is, all this memory right here, which I haven't had an issue with. So if you want to be publishing very long podcast episodes, or if you want to be publishing something very short, this is going to have all that information, or this is going to have all the memory that you would like for it. So keep that in mind. And that is a little bit about the hosting platform. And it's very straightforward. I might look confusing right now because this is your first time looking at it, but I promise you, once you get into it, it's not very challenging. All right, so step 3 is to buy a microphone. I prefer to use the Yeti microphone. That's what I'm recording this on right here. You can, like I said, there are tons of different microphone options you can have, anywhere from $100 microphones to thousands and thousands of dollar microphones. This one is the Yeti. It's a company by Blue. You have the Blue Yeti microphones, $129. You can get in all sorts of different fun colors. If you're interested, you can click buy now, or you can go to most music stores and they will have these available right off the shelf. And this is awesome. It's a USB plug, and you just plug it right in. It's super easy to work with. It records very high quality, and it's really inexpensive. So I highly recommend the Yeti. That's what I use for everything I do. I'm also a musician, and this works great for music as well. So this is the Yeti microphone. You're going to want to find some type of microphone. Do not rely on the default settings on your computer mic or even on your iPhone mic. There are so many better microphones out there, and if you're recording a podcast that's part of your business, you're going to want to give across that professional look and feel. So, step 3, buy a microphone. I recommend the Blue Yeti product. Step 4 is editing. So, in editing, you have the introduction, the outro, and your editing software. So let's talk editing software first. As you can see here, this is the link for Adobe Audition, and that is a Creative Cloud-based software. So Adobe Creative Cloud gives you a whole bunch of fun softwares you can use that go really in depth with a lot of opportunities. One of those is Adobe Audition. You can have tons of different options with your music. Now, this is quite expensive. However, it gives you a ton of different options. This is a podcast that we just recorded, Marissa and I, and as you can see, you can cut stuff, you can drag, drop, delete, you can record right out of here. It's very easy to work with, and you can do a lot of really cool different effects. You have all sorts of different podcast effects, delays, a lot of cool stuff when you want to get into it. So this software works very well for podcasting, works very well for recording music, and to be honest, it probably has more options than you're going to need getting into podcasting. It's also quite expensive to work with. So that's why I put this option up here. Another friend of mine, we just got him started on his podcast, and he uses this. This is called Audacity. And Audacity right here, you can go to audacityteam.org. You have free open source software that you can use for editing and all sorts of things that you need. This really does just about whatever you need, pretty much the same as Audition. Obviously, Audition has a lot more detailed options, a little bit easier to work with. You can do a lot of cool stuff with it, but for what you guys need as a podcaster, this is free. It's very easy to use. Like I said, my friend, he does a sports podcast. He kills it, and this is all he uses. So he uses this Yeti microphone, and then he also uses this software. So you can get started for free with this right here, Audacity. Bringing it back, you're going to want to have a good introduction, and you're going to want to have a good outro. So I don't even have an outro. I just have an introduction. But some people prefer to have an outro as a way to kind of corral them and funnel them into something. So if you want to funnel people into a Facebook group, that would imply that you need to have a Facebook group first to funnel them into. Second, you're going to need to have some type of promotion within that. So you can have a pre-recorded thing that says, hey, my name's AJ Armstrong. You can follow me at blah, 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 blah. You can go to this, this, and that, and go follow me at this Facebook link. You can see it in the bio, whatever, or in the link description. You can talk about stuff like that. Or you can just do what I usually do is at the end of my podcast, I say, once again, my name's Aaron Armstrong. You can follow me at aaronjarmstrong.com, or you can go to my Instagram at aaronarmstrong33. So that at least just people can stay connected with me. They can follow me. They can see what I'm up to, all that different stuff. And they have everything in the world they need to know at aaronjarmstrong.com. So if they're really interested in connecting with me, they know where to find me. But some people will actually pre-edit an outro. The intro, though, however, I think is usually a lot more important. The introduction, you're going to want to have some type of, I like to have music or whatever your style is, whatever your genre. So I keep it under 20 seconds. I don't recommend much longer than 20 seconds because I think that people lose interest after that. So I'd keep it about 20 seconds, usually have some music, do a little introduction. If you have guests or something, or you have a lot of episodes already done, I just changed up mine. I spliced in a couple different, key quotes or phrases from guests that I thought were pretty motivating and inspiring. So depending on what your genre is, mine is more motivation. So I tried to come up with a little bit more pump up music, where some people might be doing something on meditation would do something like soft piano background or get relaxed or something like that. So get creative with what you want and have a specific introduction for you. Step 5 is inviting guests. So inviting guests, you're going to want to have two things. Number one, you're going to want to have a podcast release form, which I'll show you in a second. And then you're going to want to have an introduction letter. So as you can see, here's an example of an introduction letter I just used on Buzz Aldrin, who, if you guys don't know, Buzz Aldrin is the second man on the moon, but he's connected to us in our West Point network. So as you can see, the first paragraph, I kind of go through a little bit of an introduction about me and what I'm asking within the first sentence, and then I try to bring some sort of commonality between the two of us in the second one. So I say, look, we have a connection. We're both part of the West Point community. So that's one thing that you'll notice in influence tactics is that people generally like. So if you're like them in some way, they're going to want to connect with you. So try to find things, some common ground with people that you want to invite as your guests and see what you have. It could be a common friend, it could be a common relationship, it could be something. So try to use that here. The second piece, I'm just telling them a little bit about my audience because that's probably what they're more interested in hearing about. What's your audience like and how is this going to benefit me? So if they're trying to promote a book to veterans, entrepreneurs, and fitness enthusiasts, then I am going to be a great person to have promote their product. But if it's going to be something completely different, then you're going to want a little bit of a different audience. So just think about, you want to just explain who they're going to be talking to. I think that's going to be interesting for them. That's what they're going to want to know. The third paragraph right here is just explaining who the other guests have been and why they fit into them. And the fourth paragraph is just a little bit more about the tactics of what to expect with the podcast. So it's a short 30 to 45 minute interview via video call. If it's something else, if you want to meet them in person, just explain all that here. And then the last piece is just kind of the call to action. If they want to join on, just reply all. Kristen is in the email, that's my assistant, and she'll help work with us. So that's the introduction letter. Just make it very professional. You want to make sure that you got your stuff figured out because people just want to be comfortable. They don't want to feel like they're being scammed. And if you can just make them feel comfortable and you're very professional, you're a legitimate podcast, this is what you can do. The second piece is the podcast release form. So up here I made a Google form. That's it. Very simple. Google form that you can have right here, which has your podcast. It's got a little bit of an invitation note in here. It's got some general information that they can fill out where they can put all of their stuff so I can help promote their platform because that's what the podcast is. It's giving them an opportunity to promote to my audience. So their website, their location, their bio, the guest bio right here, this is where you're just going to want to read this verbatim when you introduce them. It's quite easy if they put a good bio together with a good description of their life or their title and all that good stuff. It should be very easy to just read right off of here. A couple other links for them, and then their photo. So as you can see right here, this is a lot of the winners of the week. That's my podcast when I have guests. Their professional photos allows me to make a little bit of an infographic for them so that we can help promote their thing on the social channels. Last piece of this is I recommend you speak with an attorney to get a podcast release statement. This is my release statement. This is just saying basically I own all of the rights of this podcast, and if someone else tries to say that, they try to sue me or whatever, I can say, look, you guys acknowledged this, you agreed and signed. So it's a little bit more of a liability. Like I said, work with your attorney on this piece of it, but you're going to want to have some type of podcast release. This also makes it very professional as well, so they'll feel more comfortable with that. And finally, step 6, which is publishing and promoting. So you're going to want to publish through Lipson, which I showed you a little bit before, and I'll show you again here. So right here, as you can see, you'll get all the way through to scheduling, and it's kind of cool because you can actually schedule out certain dates if you're interested in that. You can put different when you want to release, all that good stuff. There's like some advanced scheduling options. I don't know what a lot of this does. I don't think you need to. However, if you're really interested, you can dig into all these different things. Like I said, I'm not an expert in putting podcasts together. I'm just trying to give you guys a show of how you can do this in 30 minutes. It's not that hard. If you want to hire like a podcast coach, some people do that. However, this is really cool. So you can just publish right from here. You press publish, it goes to all of these different channels, these destinations that you set out. Like I said, in my podcast, I have all these as my destinations that it goes to. So Spotify, you probably recognize, iHeartRadio, Google Play. These are the classic feeds, which I'm going to show you here in a second. Web player, YouTube. So this is going to go to your iTunes. It's going to go all over the place for everything. What's really cool too is I have my own website for my own company at ArmstrongVenturesLLC.com, which is also AaronJArmstrong.com. However, the Lipson included in your subscription will give you 3 of these links. This is a Google Play link. This is a Lipson Classic feed, and this is a podcast page. So if you click on the podcast page, which is pretty cool, you don't have to do anything. All you got to do is publish your podcast, and it gives you your own page for all of your different episodes. So if you wanted to just throw this in your Instagram bio and say, hey, check this out, without having to put together a website or go through that, just another thing to slow you down from getting into action is you can just give them this link, which is pretty cool. And it's got your name or whatever your custom link wants to be, .libsyn.com. So pretty good domain as well. It's pretty easy to find. Most people are familiar with Libsyn who are kind of well known in social media. However, it's just really easy way to get a website going without having to get yourself all caught up and thinking that you need to go build a website now and all that other stuff. So I think that's a pretty cool feature if you're just getting into it and you're kind of a newbie in the podcasting world. Like I said, there's some of these other links as well that give you more opportunities to share this with people. So that's a little bit about the publishing side of it. And then it kind of gets into the next piece of this, which is promotion. So what I would always recommend is to leverage all existing social media channels. If you don't have a social media presence, it's going to be very difficult to promote this. Not impossible, but very difficult. So you're going to want to build up as much social media backing as you possibly can. So think about what your number one platforms are and start to go into what I call what's called the launch formula. So this is a book here. It's by Jeff Walker, and it's called the launch formula. So the launch formula is pre-launch, launch, post-launch. Yeah, that's not a typo. That's pre-launch, launch, post-launch. I recommend, once again, that's Jeff Walker writes the book, The Launch, and I recommend this with all of my different clients when we go through online publishing and online platforms and promoting their products via the internet or whatever, web-based or social media now. So it's very easy to use this formula if you've got it right. But basically what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to think about all of the pre-launch. You're going to want to get probably 16 weeks or more of pre-launch content ready to go, starting to announce with your audience that you are going to be launching a podcast, starting to share with people. You want to get the conversation going and you want to get it top of mind. If you have an email list, if you have social media following, if you've got people, if you don't have anything, you probably at least have a personal Facebook account, which gives you some access to all of at least your personal friends and family. I don't know if they'll necessarily support it or not, but that is what you want to do. You want to leverage what you already have the best that you can. So this is where you're going to start doing pre-launch and pre-launch. You're going to want to get all of that content out there. Once you go into the launch phase, you're going to want to set a date that you're going to launch. Don't publish anything on your platforms, because what ends up happening is you have a window of 8 weeks that iTunes will use to try to meet the algorithms of new and noteworthy podcasts. So you have about 8-week window. That's what we've kind of figured out. It's not formal anywhere, but that's pretty much what we think, is you got about 8 weeks to get that on new and noteworthy. So once you hit publish, what ends up happening is you're on the clock. So if you want to do some test runs, I recommend doing the test runs very close to your launch date so that you don't end up messing with those algorithms. Now, once you start to launch, you're going to want to go hard for about 7 to 16 days. So 7 to 16 days. That's going to give you a good window of time, and all you post on your social media platforms is your podcast. So you're going to want to have a ton of infographics. You're going to want to have a ton of different promotional graphics. You're going to want to have a ton of different videos, all sorts of fun stuff that you can have, and you're going to want to push as much of that stuff out there as possible. I always recommend having about 3 to 5 podcasts in the queue. So the first week during your launch, put 3 to 5 podcasts out there, and then have about 3 more in the queue. So you're going to have about 8 podcasts before you even launch, ready to go in the queue. And you're going to want to do that because when you can put 3 out there, you get a lot more downloads. So people are going to probably download all 3 at once. And if you have 5 out there, they're going to download all 5 at once. And then you can get into your rhythm, whether that's weekly, whether that's 2 a week, whether that's every day, whether that's once a month, whatever your rhythm is, you're going to start to figure that out after you do those initial 5, because you're going to want to get as many of those downloads as possible. So what the downloads do is that helps the algorithm of getting you on new and noteworthy, as well as if they do reviews or subscriptions or anything like that, it's going to help a lot. So you want to do some type of incentive to get them to comment or review or share or subscribe or download. So that's why I always do the giveaway. Like, you could do a $100 Amazon gift card giveaway. Really easy to set up, and then you just put them in an auto number generator for all the different comments you have. You can pick one, you can send them a gift card. You can do $1,000 gift card giveaway. Whatever you want to do, some type of incentive to get as many people to rate you 5 stars and to comment something positive. And you can just start with make a list of all your friends and family, whatever you can, to get as many people helping you as possible. So think about that when it comes to promotion. You want to leverage your social media channels. You're going to want to do the launch formula to a T. Like I said, Jeff Walker, the book's called Launch. And then you're going to want to get into how many people can I possibly get to subscribe during the launch. So that's one of the things you're going to want to think about as you get into your promotion. Once again, guys, this is all I had today. I just wanted to give you a quick rundown of how you can start your podcast in 30 minutes. Like I said, you could do this right now. You could sign up with a Lipson account. You could put together some infographics in Canva or something like that, and you can already be on your way to starting your podcast. So this was for you. This is free. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a fantastic week.